welcome to this show with a very popular and well received panelist. He has spoken with us many times, and today he is going to speak on our last popular question that all of you had. What happened to Hindus after the Gupta period, based on his last talk? And I'm very happy that you caught something which that's our aim is to debunk all mythology and a lot of mythology being or fake history being taught to the Indians as well as to the Westerners. So we'll quickly get on with that topic with Sri Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Welcome, Abhijit.
Thanks for having me. Har Har Mahadev.
So, Har Har Mahadev. So, what happened? Like, what happened in after the Gupta period? I think I'll give you one reference from Srimad Bhagavatam. In Bhagavad Puran, it says that Vishwas Purji is the name which is mentioned there, which is nothing but the Gupta period. In the Bhagavad Puran, the history till Gupta period is given. And after that, immediately Bhagavad Puran says Yavana took over India.
Mm.
So I think that's the point you had in mind, something like that.
So there's two things to this. So one, I've read a lot of speculation that the Guptas are actually in the BC period, and the Guptas we know as the Guptas are, as in 400 AD, aren't actually the Guptas, and this was a much later period. See, the problem there is that, Indian archaeology, we spend so little on the archaeological survey of India. Nobody in India wants to study archaeology as a subject. So we have a whole set of problems there with our archaeology that we're not able to prove anything. When was the last time you actually had an Indian author actually write something big on archaeology? Right? You look at the state of preservation of our monuments, they're absolute rubbish. So much so that even the more loved monuments, the Muslim monuments, the Humayun's tomb, for example, we allowed the Aga Khan to come and make a complete hash of it. The man has gone and destroyed that tomb. I remember it as a kid. It used to be, beautiful on the inside, and they just painted over it and turned it into something ugly. So, our archaeology, unfortunately, isn't very good to prove any of that. But the second problem is that, in ancient India, we have this great love of abstraction, which makes things very difficult. When you say Yavana, who exactly do you mean as the Yavana? Yavana technically means Ionian, Greek, basically. But, it's open to so much interpretation, because if you look at our ancient books, they're all, there are 16 kinds of happiness. There's the happiness when you lay with your wife. There is a happiness when you lay with another man's wife. So, we're fantastic at classifying the abstract. But when it comes to actually classifying what exists, vultures, eagles, or things like that, you don't have a taxonomy, right? Everything is just eagle, Garuda. Everything is just, vulture, Jatayu. You don't even go into the types, and you don't have a sort of biological referencing system and things like that. So as a general rule, I find this whole thing of Yavana quite problematic. But let's discuss what happens starting in 480. We know from, all these travelers, Fa Hien and Huensang and all of that by 480, there was still no strict stratification of caste. And then when the second one comes, I don't know who came first, Fa Hien or Huensang, I keep forgetting. This is like Ghori and Ghazni, I keep forgetting the sequences. But basically 480, there isn't a stratification. The Mauryas come from apparently peasant stock, but they're still accepted as kings. You have, one of the southern dynasties, I forget which one, which came from extremely humble background, and unlike others that used to ascribe a genealogy to themselves, saying, we were actually kings once upon a time. These guys actually took a great deal of pride. I forget the dynasty's name, but a very famous dynasty, Karnataka, I think, Karnataka Andhra, in being from a humble background. Now, suddenly, in 700-ish, you see when in Harsha's court and things like that, so just before 700, say around 500-ish, 500 to 700-ish, you suddenly start seeing ossification. You start seeing feudalism set in that sense, in that we stop seeing the kind of uh, urban value systems that exist. You're in an urban society, you can't. Caste hierarchy is something that is very, very rural. In an urban society, you simply can't have that. You can't live. The whole point of an urban area is synergy. You can't enforce this kind of rigid stratification in an urban society. And so what you have from it is when this Chinese traveler comes and talks about the prevalence of caste in Harsha's time, in Harsha's court, and things like that, you're clearly looking at a symptom of ruralization happening. And this is important because you see a lot of similar symptoms happening in Rome as well. Rome just automatically sort of de-urbanized. It wasn't a forced process. It was a very natural process that happened. And it happens to a lot of civilizations that they tend to de-urbanize, become rural, and then ossification starts setting in. The problem here is Indian archaeology. We have such rubbish archaeology. We have no proper, scientific equipment where you invest in archaeology as a serious science. And so you're not able to go through the numismatics of the period. You're not able to deal with anything because your numismatics would tell you a lot. You could see from the debasement of currency what the economic situation actually was. We don't have any of that. Or if we have any of that, it simply isn't prominent enough to have been woven into a comprehensive book. But what we see is that the decline from about 400 to 700 becomes absolutely precipitous. The second big trend that you see that is a reflection of a social trend is also the demilitarization of society. Right? We used to be an extremely violent, warlike society. When anybody tells you that India was this peaceful little cult, like those what those cult. What Branch Davidian cult that got burnt down, David Koresh in Waco, Texas, or whatever. So we're all cult members. We all wear flowers in our hair, and we all go around dancing kumbaya. And there's that Hindi movie song, "Jahan डाल डाल पे सोने की चिड़िया करती है बसेरा, जहाँ हर बालक है एक मोहन और हर बालिका एक राधा." ऐसे. This did not happen in India. Okay, this absolutely did not happen in India.
No, never.
Okay, we were an extremely militaristic, warlike society that used to fight internecine battles. Very, very nasty battles, but we had a code of conduct. We didn't go around sacking people and killing whole villages and cities. You had a code of conduct, much like hoplite warfare. And it was quite aggressive and in your face. So what you see is that there is a complete collapse of this warlike culture. Is this because of Buddhism? We don't really know. Is this because of Jainism? Again, we don't really know. The problem is that this entire period, this what I consider to be the dark ages of Hinduism from about 400 to 700, we simply do not know what is happening.
Or it has been.
But just one other thing I want to draw your attention to, it is also a period of ossification. Remember, from when the Sanchi Stupa is built, which is one of the earliest, sort of freestanding buildings that we have that still remain. You look at temples from this period, the internal volume simply isn't increasing. Now, it is natural for a civilization to keep building bigger, better, grander. And yet we see that not happening out here, which is highly problematic because there is clear signs here of ossification. So you combine everything, this slow drop in militarism, this sort of ruralization that we can infer because of caste equations, this ossification of architecture and things like that. There is a problem out here. The problem is we don't know what.
No, there is you see, every country tries to after independence from colonial era, I call them faith-based colonialists. Uh, they try to find out about their identity, find out about their history, and invest money in creating a national identity. India has not done that. Americans are doing it now more and more. So there is a lot more research on Native Americans today than ever before, because everyone knows that the European settlers were the invaders, not they were not the people who were welcome, the way the stories are made out to be. So you see a lot of
Absolutely.
documentaries coming out where the Native American point of view is taken more importance. In India is exactly the reverse. They are
Mm.
still in the colonial mode. They are still like the colony of Britain. They have not left the British Commonwealth, and they don't do anything to revive or to tell the real story to their own people.
So, I would disagree that this is about colonialism. This is about the Nehru Gandhi family. Because what happens is that we have, every country, not a nation, every country is an imagined identity. And the way Huntington describes it is in who we are, it's substance and salience. Substance is what binds us together, salience is what separates us from the other. Now, the Indian imagination, as in the Republic of India's imagination of itself, is basically from this united struggle against the British. Why? Because that was what gave the Congress and Nehru validation. And this is something that is very, very dangerous, because when you have the Party of Independence reduced to 44 and then 52 seats in Parliament, you realize that the idea of India itself, based on their family's myth, on that party's identification of India, it is waning. So you desperately now need to reinvent India. This isn't a case of simply rewriting history books, even though we've had a HRD minister take pride in the fact that he hasn't changed a single word in our history books. This is now a very, very dangerous problem at a serious anthropological level, which needs to be taken very, very seriously. You need to reinvent India. And the framework of that, unfortunately, is quite complex. Because if you say that we are Indic, what is Indic? There is a fundamental religious connotation to Indic. Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists can all claim to be Indic. The Abrahamic faith simply cannot claim to be Indic. So in what framework then you accommodate them into a new Indic, redefinition of India in the sense? Okay, so let me give you a simple example. It's like today, if we re-identified India, or let me give you a Western example. If Italy today re-identified itself as the Roman Empire, okay, it would be a scary, pathetic joke. The Romans were a very martial race. You go to Italy today, they couldn't care about martial prowess, anything. The only thing they're concerned about is pasta with the bucatini. Should an amatriciana be cooked with garlic or without garlic? Or should a carbonara be cooked with garlic or without garlic? You never put garlic into a carbonara, by the way, but in amatriciana, it's a problem. You look at the caliber of debates in Italian papers today. It is not even film actors and things like that. It is literally garlic in amatriciana or wine in a mushroom risotto. This is the so you reimagine yourself as a Roman Republic. It has to have a modern day relevance. We need to find that story desperately now, and this is what the Congress is sort of not allowing us to happen without, I think, realizing the greater macro anthropological trends. That said, I am very, very suspicious of this going back to certain revisionist schools. Because if you look at the history of pre-United States America, I'm not saying the white people were God's gift to mankind and were very kind and all of that. It was a horrible, brutal occupation. But it was still far, far, far better than what it replaced. Do not forget that. Pre-Columbian Americas was a Stone Age society. The fundamental sociological markers of a Stone Age society are extraordinary levels of societal violence, cannibalism, human sacrifice, common across the board everywhere. The Mexicans get very upset when you talk about Aztecs and the Maya and things like that doing human sacrifice or cannibalism. Sadly, it was a fact. In Bengal, we used to have human sacrifice and cannibalism. You still have even today. The Agoris will practice it in a ritual sense. But human sacrifice went on till about 1800 and something. The last human sacrifice in China was done by the Ming dynasty, by the penultimate emperor of the Ming dynasty. The Qing did not do human sacrifice. So, there are certain elements to all of this where pre-Columbian America, trust me, you and I or any native Indian living today, even in the most miserable conditions in a reservation, would not want to be living in that period. You are looking at fatality rates of 25%. Even in World War II, you did not lose more than about 1 to 2% of your population. Can you imagine 25%? Low, insistent, persistent violence on a daily basis where you don't know if you're going to live or die. It is a horrible, horrible situation. I would wish it on anyone. So we need to be very, very careful about these things and not start false glorifying a past that did not exist. For example, jahan dal dal pe sone ki chidiya.
A very good point and very powerful also. You put a very strong analogy as well. The Columbian exchange was a very dreaded phenomena. It actually should not have happened. It was brought in, and actually the biggest sufferers was Native American tribes. And I'm saying when I say Native Americans, I include both North and South America because it was one culture. Even today, it's a one culture. Now, coming back to the last point and last question on this one, the you put a very strong point on the history, missing years of history. Now, up till 1150 years after Krishna's left the planet, history is very clearly mentioned who was ruling between, so which is around 3800 years back. So 3800 years back is actually where Chandragupta Maurya actually was there, Chanakya was there, which is very badly shown in the Gregorian calendar. So the calendar mismatch is a deliberate attempt, which you all know, and gradually more and more people are finding out. And you also very correctly mentioned the ASI of India has failed miserably in doing the job which it's supposed to do, maybe due to political interference or not. Like Gandhi Nehru Parivar, maybe because of that. Why the now the things are, see, the thing is the world doesn't live in the past for too long, especially the modern world. We have less memories. We are today's generation, we like to limit ourselves to 140 or 280 characters. Now why we are slowing down? What is the reason now to work on the textbooks and the take out the missing links? There are a lot of books available, a lot of authors there, a lot of people have written about it, but those people are neglected. So what is your say on that, please?
See, the problem of why these authors are neglected has to do with the fact that they've never been mainstreamed. Now, mainstreaming can only happen with state support and institutional capture. Okay, let us not even for a minute think that you can do this without institutional capture.
Absolutely.
The British did it with institutional capture. Their, the Macaulay Putras, as we like to call them, did it with institutional capture. They continue to do it with institutional capture even now. How else do you explain that a man like Javed Akhtar, who seeks out fatwas from muezzins on following the lockdown and everything else under the sun, gets the Richard Dawkins Award for atheism and promoting rationality? Okay, so if for a moment we think that this is going to happen, and unfortunately in this, Modi has been the biggest disappointment ever. No change in social policy, no change in the history books, no creation, no promotion of people who have come up. Now, the thing is, 90% of it might be wrong. Okay, assume that, forget 90%, assume 100% of it is wrong. Assume that the Mauryan Empire starts in about 326 BC, after Alexander comes in, and that the Guptas are 400 AD-ish. even that, the point is start up the conversation, give the archaeological survey funds to prove or disprove it, and then go by the scientific record. You don't even want to do that. You don't even want to have the conversation, okay, before you legitimize it. How are you meant to proceed on that basis? So I have to say, this whole nonsense that we keep hearing that the BJP gives us of, being pro-Hindu and all of that, they're really not. The best thing that can be said about the BJP is that it is not anti-Hindu, but honestly, with pro-Hindus like this, I think, it's only marginally better than having a Mohammed bin Tughlaq. Marginally. It's better, but just marginally.
So this brings to the next question about first of all, the timelines is one area. Another is the historians you already spoke on, ASI also, which is Archaeological Society of India or Survey of India. Now, another point which comes to the mind is, I'll give an example of the US. The US has a home department with an undersecretary which works only on cultural issues in the US. And which cultural means, and they're very smart. Cultural means that just imagine that 1924 Americans gave US citizenship to Native Americans. That's where I'll start. In 1924. So this cultural undersecretary, what he or she does is that the role of the department is to bring out all the original history of USA and put it in the academic circles back as an American. Now there is no leftist, no right wing can touch that. It is beyond anybody's political reach. Now that's how you build the identity of a new nation like USA. Now, what to speak of India, where the cities itself are older than humanity, most of the humanity, like Kashi is older than anything which anything in the world has ever seen.
So,
So,
when the Muslims first came and sacked Mathura, Turks technically, they had never in their lives even seen a city like Mathura, which tells you a lot because, they came from the old Silk Road, which always had grand, brilliant cities. You go look at, last year or last year, I was in Afghanistan. We went around interviewing Taliban and things like that. And we went to Balkh. Balkh is where Zoroaster was meant to have been born and things like that. And we went to Balkh. The city walls are so magnificent. We had nothing like that in India. Huh? Even your modern Rajasthani forts maybe match up to it. But other than that, we've got nothing like that in ancient India. Extremely thick, extremely high, truly a sight to behold. So for people like that to be astonished at the scale of Mathura is truly amazing. But here's the problem. Where is your archaeology to dig all of this up and prove it? It is only now that in Varanasi and Kashi, I think old temples are being dug out and they're being freed from all the encroachments that have happened around them and things like that. But remember, history is not about temples. History is about how the people lived. Unfortunately, in this country, we still have this 1940s, 1950s. It's not even 1940s, 1950s. It's your Heinrich Schliemann, 1910, 1920. Heinrich Schliemann and, Lord Carnarvon and Howard Carter going discovering Tutankhamun. It's all about the king and it's all about the treasure. Okay. That is not what modern archaeology is about. It's about how the people lived. What were the lives of the people? Because that tells us a lot more than trying to find kings and things like that. We don't have any of this. You can't clear out the land. You can't dig. In Jerusalem and things like that, they're very careful and sensitive. Jerusalem and Rome, which have so many layers of history built up, they're very, very sensitive about how they dig and do certain things and find out certain things. Here, you simply will not. There are so many sites that have been just completely destroyed. I remember Tamil Nadu. There used to be this incredible, south of Madras, there used to be this incredible petrified forest, which is now completely gone. It was thousands upon thousands of fossilized wood, which are completely gone. And that is a whole page, that is a whole millions of years of history, of your geographic history that are completely wiped out because people have stolen all of this. Can you ever imagine that Petrified Forest National Park in Albuquerque, outside Albuquerque, New Mexico, America would have ever allowed that to ever have been touched like that? No. But here you just don't take it seriously. I mean, the easiest example to do is to look at monuments in Delhi that have been vanishing. Fairly new monuments, about 1800, 1700 period, monuments that have been vanishing. Look at food. Food is your most classic determinant of culture. Unlike Spain, unlike Italy, that have committees to sit and nominate key, this tomato comes from here, this banana comes from here, this mango comes from here, get patents on certain things. The only time we hear about this is when a foreign company tries to take on a patent, and then everybody's up in arms out here. You still don't have a food classification like the DOCG and things like that in Italy, or the Appellation d'origine contrôlée in France and things like that. I hate to say this, and I'm going to be really rude about it, but unfortunately, Trump was right. We're a third world shithole, and we behave like a third world shithole. Nobody is going to respect our culture unless we start respecting our own culture and start taking it seriously.
Absolutely. I think if in India, they all talk about Vishwa Guru, but I think they're Vishwa follower right now. And also, actually, they have a self-denigrating and deprecating look on themselves also, which comes from a lot of colonial past or lack of self-respect. And I totally agree with you, because if we do not respect our own culture, our own identity, and build upon it, it won't happen. Like a country like Burma, they gave up British Commonwealth because they don't want to be connected with British any longer, and India is still a part of it. So thank you so much, Abhijit. I know you have to go, and it was a wonderful session as usual. And I'm already getting rave reviews by people who are watching it. And one funny question somebody asked just now to you, and he said that, from where do you get all that passion?
Um, Look, you call it passion. My parents always call it problematic. I was always the problem child. My teachers always thought I was a problem child. My employers, even now, I get them into deep shit over my tweets. The problem is that, the value add I bring to the organization is more than the trouble I bring to the organization. So thank you so much. That's very kind of you. But, unfortunately, I'm the problem child. So I'm not a child anymore. I'm a middle-aged man, but I like to think of myself as a problem child. But yeah, but thank you so much. Jai
Thank you,
Bhavani.
Devavani. It's a pleasure, and viewers keep watching. And already we have 5, 6 questions came up. So next time in the next session. Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.